Hey guys, welcome to another Realm of the Mad God video. In today's video, I want to talk about my first impressions of the new Bard class. It came out today, which is May 20th if you're watching this later in the future. Basically, every dungeon you go to within the next week or so after this video is released, expect at least 40 out of 65 of the total players that could be in a dungeon to just be bards. Just get used to it. So many parrots, oh my word, that one loot that spawns an entire army of parrots, Jesus. Especially if there's like 10 people that all have it, you're just seeing parrots everywhere. It's, oh my, I really hope they find a way to disable the visual for that because that can get very, very laggy. Anyways, there's gonna be some background footage of me playing the class along with my impressions of it. This is also a live post narrative. I'm not reading off of a script or anything, so if it sounds more rambly, I do apologize. I just thought keeping it a little conversational would not be too bad given that it's a first impressions video. I've played it for about 3 hours, which I think is a suitable amount of time to draw some accurate conclusions. Unfortunately, I still have yet to get any of the untiered drops, untiered loots, the untiered abilities. However, I did manage to get myself a tier 6, not in this video, but I was able to purchase one. And I gotta say, the inspired buff is a lot better than I initially gave it credit for. When they first talked about how the Bard is going to be able to increase the projectile range of weapons, I was like, why would you do that? That's a horrible idea. Part of the difficulty of Realm is that you need to, within a certain degree, get close to your enemy, to the enemies to shoot them, and all the while you have to dodge their attacks that counterfire towards you. Increasing the range may essentially eliminate the need for that. That's why melee classes have a higher risk to reward ratio because they do a lot more damage, right? Warrior is probably the highest DPS class in the game, but to offset that, you have to get very close to the enemies to do that damage. And if you have a Bard just giving you the same range as a Wizard or an Archer, I'm like, then why would you ever want to play Wizard? I found out later that the range increase is multiplicative, not additive. I thought it was just going to be like everyone gets 3 more tiles of range. I'm like, no, don't do that. That's a horrible idea. But it turns out it's a 25% range increase, which means that, let's say, you're not getting as much benefit from putting it on an Oryx Greatsword of 2.8 range than you would on a St. Abraham's Wand. I'm not too big a fan of the steamroll meta we're in. I mean, I like it in that we no longer have to constantly worry about the impending danger that is our inevitable demise of getting popped by either an Oryx shotgun or something like that. But at the same time, it kind of trivializes the difficulty of a lot of dungeons such as Lost Halls and Fungal Cavern and the like. But at the same time, that is kind of the reward you get for mastering a certain dungeon. After you learn it for a good amount of time, and you also have a very stacked party, you would want it to become easier, because if a dungeon remains permanently hard, it slowly goes from hard to tedious. And I mean, it's tedious even when it's easy, but you get what I'm talking about. When Bard came out, I was worried that they would fall into the same pattern of being a useless range class, because range classes at the moment, they're still very viable as a solo class, but like I said, if in the steamroll meta that we're in right now, by going into these big raid dungeons like Lost Halls, Nest, Fungal Cavern, Shatters, and whatnot, you almost always would want to pick up a Warrior or Paladin or Knight than a range class. Like in fact, in certain vet runs, they ban the usage of Sorcerer and Necro. But Bard, I think, is a very interesting anomaly to, I guess, the current meta. Arguably the main reason why range classes are having such a hard time right now in terms of standing out and, I guess, showing above the melee classes is because a lot of the bosses in endgame dungeons, Lost Halls, Nest, and Fungal Cavern, they confine you in a very tight space when you fight the boss. You know, the Crystal Worm Father and Mother and Child or whatever, and then the actual crystal itself, you're stuck on this island, and then in the Nest, you're stuck in this little ring. I guess to a lesser extent in the Shatters, you're confined to this platform. It's still really big, mind you, or like Void, but for the most part, you don't have much room you don't have much freedom to run away and kite back to a different room if you ever feel like you need just a quick break. Now with Bard, on the other hand, I think it doesn't really make too big of a difference in terms of the loot increasing your range. However, it provides an almost essential necessity for the party, and it's not just another ranged DPS class that doesn't do as much DPS as a melee. It's also pretty good solo. A lot of people thought that this class would just be a pure supportive class, and it still is. By niche, it is a support class. But the increased range that you get from your loot, or if you have that the one from the DDoX that spawns the parrots that attack, that could be a pretty good crowd control ability. And then that one loot that you get from Tomb of the Ancients from Nut, that can weaken bosses, that's going to be very, very good. Like weakening bosses, that's essentially the same thing as providing a sort of armored buff to your party. I'm almost certain that bosses like Marble Colossus, Void, and Cultists and stuff are immune to weak, but I don't think other than Server Heart have we ever had a ability or consumable item that weakens enemies, and that means there's probably a lot of hostile enemies that are vulnerable to weaken, and that can make things a lot better for when you're taking on a lot of high level dungeons. In other words, I'm really glad that they made Bard something other than just a ranged DPS class. We have plenty of those already. We have Sorcerer, we have Necro, we have Wizard, Archer, Huntress. Like those classes, they're pretty much all very powerful in terms of what they do in terms of damage. Even though Bard is a ranged class, the emphasis on their ability, I think, is healthy enough to where they're not necessarily over-reliant on it, right? A Priest, you kind of need your ability to do stuff, otherwise you're completely irrelevant, right? Or a Knight. Knight kind of sucks in terms of everything except the fact that it can stun and or armor break if you have an Augmer. With Bard though, even if the loot is not necessarily beneficial, right? Because the range bonus may not provide you much of a boon if you're in those confined spaces like I'm talking about with the Killer Bee Queen or the Void Entity or the crystal bosses. However, they still pack quite a bit of punch on their own. Their ability isn't just a range increase, like I talked about. We have the Parrots, which can help you do more damage, not to mention the fact that with Bards they have a high dexterity stat. Not as good of an attack stat as the likes of Archer and Huntress, but they do some pretty respectable damage on their own. Then also the fact that they have the supported capability of being able to debuff the boss. So they fit a good role in both a support and an offensive carry class, so they're good both solo and in a party. As for how well I think they're going to be sought after in terms of like if you would choose to have a Bard over another Paladin, I'm not quite sure. I do like the design of a Bard. I actually think that the increased range could be very beneficial for the likes of doing certain dungeons, such as like the Shatters. When you activate enemies, you can kite them from further away. Or if you're trying to... it certainly helps for clearing Godlands, that's for sure. But I think overall from my first impressions, I'm very satisfied with the class. I think it's pretty balanced. I do not believe they need any buffs whatsoever to their stats or to their abilities. They actually had to nerf the class because they got Energized before. I believe Energized is an increased mana regeneration, which I don't think they need that because we already have pets, and being able to, for certain classes to be able to spam abilities a lot, that defeats the purpose of the Scholar Seal. And I think the Scholar Seal should still stay relevant in terms of its usefulness. So, we'll have to see what they're gonna do. Although I do think that if they're going to ever add an event wipe, they still have yet to add an event walkie, but if they do add more untiered loots, what they could do is add a loot to make it so that all projectiles penetrate. So that means stabs can go through enemies and stuff. That could just eliminate the value of weapons that already do that, like, a Staff of Unholy Sacrifice or the Queen Bee Stinger. But, that would be pretty cool, adding a loot that buffs the party so that their projectiles all penetrate. That could be awesome. I don't know, we'll have to see how it goes. But so far, the class, very satisfied with it. Good 8 out of 10 class. Would never be my first choice. I would still much rather prefer to play an Archer or a Huntress than a Bard. But they bring their own value to the table, and I don't think that they have a niche that anyone else can really replace, which is the point. That's kind of what you want to go for. You do not want to play a class that is just completely overshadowed by another one, because then at that point, why would you ever play the class? Anyways, that's going to be it. I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and if those of you who are playing the Bard class right now, which is probably everyone, I hope you're having a good time with it. Let me know if you guys have already picked up the untiered drop, the rare drops, the white bags, the snake loot, the Tomb of the Ancients, or the Dedox loots. Let me know if you got them. I'm going to be continuing to farm them all night, and yeah, we'll see if I can get some too. Another chest opening video is coming soon as well, because I've already gotten my Bard to 4 out of 5 in terms of the fame ranking, and that means I just need a little bit more fame to get to White Star again, and you guys can then meme on how everyone's a White Star for the 3rd time. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you again soon in the next video. Take care.